Okay, everybody. Wanted to welcome you to our Conscious Leadership Forum. We do this on the first Tuesday of the month and very excited. Lots of great things going on. And hopefully everyone understands that this is for anybody that wants to raise their hand and kind of work on their perspective of what's going on and how they're managing their mind, their life, and out there to kind of start creating interest in this very important area of becoming the dominant force in our life. So with that, what is a forum? I like to put these couple slides up so we kind of understand, because this is kind of a different format. I'm not going to sit as a physician and lecture to you. I'm going to basically give a little overview of the topic today, which is something that's universal. I mean, any human has a mind, we have emotions, we have thinking, we have stress, we have all the stuff going on. And so this is for anybody. But I also want to make sure there's an opportunity for you to ask questions, and everybody learns when we do this. So basically a forum is a place, meeting, or medium where ideas and views on a particular issue can be exchanged. So today our subject is, how do we move forward smoothly into our future? You know, one of the things I was just talking to a group in England was about AI is really taking over almost all aspects of our life. You flip on something on social media, you go to look to buy something, and all of a sudden you're populated with everybody trying to get you to do something, to think a certain way, to be attracted to that. And so most people are sleepwalking through life, and this artificial intelligence is every day creating more and more influence on our minds and on what our actions. So our feelings, our thoughts, and our actions are being influenced by things outside of us. And one of the key things I know, and from studying this now for quite a while, is that it is so critical that we wake up and then, as I like to say, grow up. In other words, we've got to find ourselves and then put ourselves to free ourselves so that we become the dominant force in our life. Without that, we'll always be under the kind of mesmerized or influence of somebody else. So today we're going to talk about, starting today, what are some of the things you can do? Where does it start? And how can we move into a future where most people, we did an interview, and there was a Gallup poll done a few months ago that talks that people really feel their well-being, even their health, are the lowest levels they've ever been. And so that doesn't bode well to our future. So this work, human transformational technology, is about helping you start with the idea and understanding that you can become the dominant force in your life. And many of you may think, well, I don't know about that. Right now, I'm, all this stuff's going on. I'm stressed out. The world's changing around me. We had COVID. Now we have we thought stability in the world, and now we have Europe in a big flaming mess. So we're going to talk about that and how we can start moving on a different track. And hopefully this will be helpful, and hopefully we'll have some great questions come. So how do we move forward? Most people are literally sitting there reacting to everything that's going on and really being affected by it psychologically, to the point where emotional mismanagement is now becoming, in my opinion, the leading cause of death in the world. So what we want to talk about today is really, are you ready to move? Are you ready to change? Our 10,000-year-old operating system has been around for a long time, and it was designed for real threats, something killing you, something biting you all the time. And now most of it is actually up in here. It's things outside of us, but because of technology, we're influenced and exposed to so many things. And most of them, as we know, is a negative bias. And the brain in your thinking is about responding to negative bias, because that's what protected you. So that program from 10,000 years ago was really important. Today, not so much. In fact, what we're finding is that the cognitive emotive loops and all the thinking and feeling and emotions is stressing and churning up inside of us. And most people, if they rated their life, would say, as I mentioned earlier, that they're not doing okay. So the question is, you have to be willing and ready to move. And we'll talk more about that. Become the dominant force in your life. Taking back the locus of control. In psychology, we talk about that. When we blame other people, and we'll talk about the victim triangle in different ways today. We'll talk about how our thoughts and feelings create these loops inside. And we'll talk about how it turns us sideways. And rather than being fully present, we're in our mind. That voice in our head is talking to us all the time. And most of the things it's saying, not only are they not real, but they're actually creating stress inside us and creating poor physical health and mental health. So, and relational health, by the way. So again, I always like to bring up what consciousness is, just to have a standard to start with. So consciousness refers to the state of being aware of one's thoughts and feelings. The more we are self-aware, the more we can consciously influence our thoughts and feelings and respond in a resourceful way to help others. So let's explore that. No one would doubt the conscious outside world. Basically, if you look out at a flower pot, or a flower pot with flowers in it, or with leaves in it, a plant in it, we're pretty aware that's not us, and we look at it and see it. And depending on where we are doing comparative reality, we may turn it into something different. But as a whole, we actually see that, and we recognize that that's not part of us. In the inner world, unfortunately, what ends up happening is events, people, something happens, and we now filter it. Our ego is designed because it doesn't feel we can handle the truth as it is. So we basically say the world should be a certain way, and our thoughts and the way we handle ourselves are relatively rigid. And so when we see these things, we have thoughts, we have emotions, and we have feelings. And so we now interpret that in a very different way. So what we in essence look at is we become in the drama triangle. Now, what does that really mean? It means we either internalize or push all this stuff down. So if something happens in our life that creates pain for us psychologically, normally we'll do one or two things. We'll either project it out and leash out at somebody and react to them, or the other thing we do is we basically internalize. So when it touches our stuff, so we have a feeling or think that our stuff is actually us. Our thoughts, our emotions are inside of us. We're pretty clear most of the time that that flower pot or vase is outside of us, but inside of us are these thoughts and our emotions, and we actually think they're us. So we don't create separation, so that stuff just starts dwelling inside, and pretty soon that's why we're depressed, or why we're judging ourselves, or why we are anxious, or why we're fearful. They're all stuff inside that we think is actually us and defines us. So we're going to talk what that does. So when you feel that way, when there's a stimulus, you respond immediately. We respond without processing. We use the lower levels of our brain, the basal levels and the limbic areas, which are the ones that 10,000 years ago, the way you were programmed. You were programmed, if something was coming at you, man, you didn't wait to actually figure out what was going on. You ran, you fought, you froze, or you fainted, the 4 Fs. And you did that right away. And you didn't think about it. You just did it. And I was watching yesterday, driving out of my drive, lizards, which basically are reptilian. They have the lower brain. And they're sitting there and they basically see you coming. And what do? They freeze. Now, when you're in a car with tires, unless I manage to go in the center, I'm going to run them over. And what happens is sometimes they decide and change their mind, and they go from freezing to flight. And the last thing they do is they go out and they get smished, and they end up like a grease spot on the road. Now, I'm not really exaggerating, but that's what we end up doing. We respond in a way that's pre-programmed that we think is going to serve us best. But with modern technology, just like 10,000 years ago, that lizard probably wouldn't have got flattened because we didn't have tires, we didn't have cars, we didn't have things that could go fast. So what happens when we're in what we like to do, and we call it below the line thinking, when it doesn't get up to this area in your prefrontal cortex, when it stays and you respond from the limbic area, that is a lower brain response. And just like that lizard, we do a bunch of things that get us flattened emotionally, flattened in our relationships, and flattened in all the key aspects of our life. So here's what that is. That's the drama triangle. That's when now we're immediately reacting and looking either to be the victim, and this is a big part of the world today. People think they're being victimized. Now, it's happening in some areas. Right now, if you're in the Ukraine, yeah, but it's not having a victim mentality. It's being, yes, that's what's happening in your life. But if you look at those Ukrainians, because deep in their heart, they love and they want their freedom, they're fighting back. And even though, the Russians, and I'm not getting into the politics, but Russia is a huge Goliath, and you got David over here. And bottom line is their heart is keeping them because they basically aren't taking a victim mentality. They're standing up to what they need. The second is the villain. And right now we can right away point to Russia's the villain. Who's at fault? Well, it's the Russians. Or blame themselves or yourself, or the other is you're a hero and you're here to save the day and enable the victims. So we have to really understand those three components. So is it normal to go below the line? Yes. As I mentioned, it's your design. Your amygdala is in your limbic system. It's these twin, basically, organelles that actually are neural tripwires. And when we perceive something, it doesn't actually have to be reality. Yes, in the Ukraine right now, it is a reality. And so it's serving them well. They're reacting, they're taking cover or whatever. But over here, our thinking now there's going to be nuclear warfare and the world's going to go bad. And now we internalize it and we can't operate during the day because we're staying down in that cognitive motive loop that the world's going to blow up. That's not helpful for us. It's actually deteriorating our health and well-being, even though the thing is 2,000 miles away. Is that potential there? Yes, of course it is. But just like the serenity prayer, we have to know the difference between what we can do and what we can't do. Now, we can give aid to them, which is what we can do to help them in food and things like that. But whether this is going to be the end of the world, we have no control over that. But many people are glued to their TVs, watching this negative energy come in, not just aware, but actually inside of them, letting it tumultuously change their mental health and their physical health. So what results do we get? Most people, 95%, are stuck. They're feeling irrelevant. They don't know how to get out of it, and they're stuck in their lives. The last few years have been so catastrophic to them that they're basically in that negative feedback loops. And all you have to do is look at everything from adolescents to adults to the people that are now developing emotional issues and mental issues in terms of their feelings and how they're conducting themselves is dramatic. You have to be ready to move. You have to make that decision because the work that we're talking about is requiring you to raise your hand and move forward to become the dominant force in your life. So it starts with decide. I am ready to move. I'm tired of being a victim, that things are happening to me. I'm tired of blaming on other people. I'm ready to make the decision that I'm going to move forward. And what I want to do is become the dominant force in your life. And I can tell you, I know in my own life and the people that I work with, that to watch that conversion as they start to take more responsibility, take radical responsibility, and start to move forward and work on this, everything in their life is changing. So one of the things that you may or may not have heard, but the technology I developed now over 15 years ago starts with creating a gap rather than just responding and doing things which can make, just like that lizard that reacted and made a bad decision. We can now stop, challenge, and choose to take back control and use this part, the rational part of your brain, the part that you can look out to, envision for your future and inform yourself today. So we start making decisions in how we conduct ourselves, how we relationally work with others, and how we move forward and become leaders. And when we do that, what in essence happens is this: we create a gap from stimulus and response through stop, challenge, and choose. And in that gap, when one of those emotions starts welling up, we observe it, we actually feel it. And we'll talk about in a moment how we can actually identify, which is the first part to start to understand that letting that stuff come back up, letting it go through its natural course, not repressing it and not reacting to it. So the first part in emotional management, the first part in moving forward and starting to take control is using stop, challenge, and choose to create less reaction and eventually no reaction, and really responding in a way that moves forward and helps you in your future. So basically this moving from that survival contracted state, which is the drama triangle, to the creative expensive state, which is the empowerment triangle, takes all the difference. So rather than being a victim where it's done to me, it's not fair, I now say I'm in charge of what happens and I'm creating my new story. So the things that I have control of, and most of the disturbances are our garbage. It's our garbage inside. And when it touches our garbage, we respond in a negative way. And it can be, you can be walking down the street in a great, beautiful day, and a car can go by that happens to remind you inside, not even at a conscious level, but at an unconscious level of your old girlfriend's car, your old boyfriend's car. And all of a sudden your state changes and now you're miserable. And so what we want to do is start to first be aware when that happens so we can then help ourselves move forward. Same thing, moving from the villain, we feel better when well, who's at fault? Who can I blame this on? Or blaming it on yourself and taking that mentality, instead moving to challenging. I'm open and curious. I want to learn. Why is this happening? Like you can say this simple language like, what happened? What was missing and what was next? That's called upset technology, and it allows us to take that upset where it's starting to stimulate, or when you're interacting with someone else who's now getting their drama triangle stimulated and they're below the line, that rather than basically go into that and switch around. So rather than them feeling they're the victim and now you become the hero or the villain. Instead, you just ask those simple questions, which removes the emotional part and gets us back so we can then say, okay, these obstacles can help me grow. And then, of course, the third is being the hero rather than enabling people, and here to save the day like you're Mighty Mouse. Instead, you're here to help others get better and to empower others to be successful. So with that, if we kind of just briefly look at it, they say that we're present for about 5 seconds. We're aware of what's going on, and then something happens. It can be a phone call, a text message. It starts raining outside. It doesn't matter what it is. And we start drifting. And for most people, they drift down and say, oh, it's starting to rain. It just ruined my day. And I'm a victim feeling sorry. And they're down in the drama triangle. And when you're in the drama triangle, I talk about being in the rapids, which is the stuff we have that creates the turbulence inside of in here. Basically, when you get there, it's very hard to get out. It's just not easy because you're emotionally churned up and you have to create that separation. And that's where, if you let it get that far, you're probably going to do something that you're going to regret an hour later, whether it's eating a candy bar, yelling back at your colleague, yelling at your child. All those things put us in position where now we're doing something which overall is not what we want and not leading us forward to become the dominant force. So instead, the idea of using stop, challenge, choose is when something happens, if you now know, as soon as you start feeling that physiologic change, and by the way, your physiology, your emotions, and your cognitive areas need to be in coherence. What I mean by coherence, they should all work together. And that's one of the things we're going to be working on through this technology, is helping you learn how to create coherence. So all three of those are working together. So instead, we stop, challenge, and choose. And yes, we were starting to go into the drama triangle, but because it's not about going, we're humans. We are going to go in the drama triangle. But if you can catch yourself early, then you can shift back into full presence and not get caught up in it. Because as soon as you drift down in the drama triangle, then it's very difficult to get out, and you'll have a conversation or do something or have a behavior or an action, which you'll regret later. So we want to learn how to do that. So that's what we're talking about today. How do we move into this empowerment triangle where I'm in charge of what's happening? I'm creating my new story. I'm open and curious to learn and grow. Obstacles, rather than looking at them as woe me, they're actually opportunities for me to learn and become stronger, more in charge, and be able to create the outcomes I want for myself and my future. Stuff is going to happen in your life. It's how you respond to it that determines the outcome in the long term, whether it's advantageous or it actually turns into a negative. So again, I went over a lot of stuff really quick because I want to open this up for questions, but there is no one giant step on what we're talking about, but a lot of little ones. And what we talked about today is just becoming more aware of what's going on around you and starting to recognize that you can stop and take control and command and reestablish this area making the decision rather than other areas. The second part I want to talk about, which is going to be the fun stuff, which we'll start to really talk about in future talks, is when we get our stuff touched inside, we do think it's us and we respond from that way. Like we take basically that this is happening to me, the world should be like this. Instead, this happened, this isn't right. And then we churn right into the drama triangle. So one of the things we're going to work on as we become more aware is understanding that we can move and start to understand that our thoughts and our emotions are just like the form of that plant vase. They're outside of us. They're not us. They're things that are happening with thoughts and feelings, but they're not us. What is us is that full awareness of those things. And so we start there by looking in your journey. It starts with just observing. That's the first part. It's realizing don't be on that automatic mindless track where you're just reacting throughout your day. Start to observe. And when you're having a thought or a feeling, start to feel that, you know what, that thought and feeling isn't me. In fact, that voice in your head isn't you either. If the voice in your head was you, that's telling you all this stuff and taking your thoughts and your emotions and telling you all these things to do. If it was you, then how do you know, how can you hear it, right? You're hearing it because it's not you. So that's basically where we're going to go. And that's much more to come. So with that, Rachel, I want to open it now. Let me get out of here. Let's open this up to questions.
All right, Margie, can you come on camera and unmute yourself? There you are.
Yeah.
Hi, Margie.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can. I hear you fine.
Hi, Dr. A. All of this is so new for me, the conscious and the unconscious. And I come from a very emotionally mismanaged family. And as a matter of fact, I'm the youngest of 5 siblings. And right now we are going through a very traumatic time with my with my 93-year-old mother. And so I am so thankful for these tools, because yesterday I sent a text saying what's happened, what's missing, and what's next. So I am just loving all of this. And I'm also loving discovering who I really am. But my question is in regards to our inner voice. We keep working on silencing our negative critic, the inner roommate. So do we listen to the good things that we tell ourselves? And if this voice isn't us, who are we? And I was watching a previous seminar of yours, and you said that our thoughts and emotions don't define us. But if they don't, then what does define us?
Wow, I love that.
And so I kind of get the feeling that I'm going to be devoid, like I'm a machine or a robot. So that's all of my questions.
Those
Dr.
are cool. Those are really cool questions. And so those are the questions of a lifetime. Those are questions of the mystery of the universe, so to speak, right? But they're actually clearing up. You know, we have interpersonal neurobiology now. We have MRIs. We have ways to light up different areas of the brains. We have the opportunity to think of thoughts. And so let me just say this to you. So your voice in your head are your thoughts and your feelings. They're not you. So you think, oh my goodness, if this, because what you did is you even have a story, you started, and I have permission to coach you, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you started off with a story about your 90-plus-year-old grandmother and the issue.
My mom.
Oh, it's your mom. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I can't believe it's your mom, you know, because basically you look too young to have a mom that old.
Well, I'm the baby of 5. So
okay, the baby. All right. Okay. So anyway, here's the situation. There's something going on. It was beautiful how you handled it, because if you sit there and get pulled into the drama triangle, then if you notice the other thing about the drama triangle, you know, there's basically the victim, the villain, and the hero. And you just cycle around in that, right? And so within your family, people take different positions on it, and none of them are really helpful. You know, it's okay to grieve, it's okay to be sad, but it's not okay to have that take over your mind. And your mind and your thoughts are actually not you. So when you say, okay, well, if your thoughts and your feelings don't define you, then I feel like a robot. No, it's the exact opposite. You're acting like a robot based on every experience you've had in your life. You're letting your reactive limbic system in your brain take you wherever it wants and basically not allow you to actually fully enjoy reality. One of the key things that's going to happen, Margie, is when you start to take that back, the opposite happens. Life is fully alive. So, you know, if you're let's say you're driving on where do you live?
Washington State.
Okay, great example, because it's beautiful there. So let's just say you just came out of a conversation and you got in your car, and like you're in your car and they're talking about your mom. And you're driving let's just pick it out a time. It's in the fall and all the leaves are changing. It's autumn and it's gorgeous. A sunny day, which I know you don't have that many of, but it's a sunny day. And if you're fully exposed to this drama triangle and you're thinking about your mom and what was just said, you could take a drive down a 15-mile road that was absolutely exquisite and not see any of it. Because now your thoughts and feelings are creating a cognitive emotive loop. And rather than enjoying this space and time, you're so preoccupied with it. And what you're doing is your voice in your head is churning up and making your story. It's taking things and it's actually contributing to more and more. And so what happens is it's the exact opposite. When you free yourself, so what you are in the reality is your full awareness. You are the consciousness. The highest level of expression of yourself is when you no longer let your stuff, people, things, events touch your stuff. Because your stuff are all the things when we were growing up and through where we are now until we start really studying this and really wanting to become the dominant force. All that stuff is there based on references that a lot of them don't matter. When you looked at yourself when you were 10 years old, and if you go right now and look at yourself in the mirror, basically, even though physically you've changed, inside of you, you're the same person. Exactly, right? You've had these conversations. You can go back to when you were 10, remember your first boyfriend or the prom or whatever, and you were there. You were the awareness. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that you don't have thoughts and feelings that are helpful. Of course you do. How do we build everything we've got? How are we on Zoom right now? Somebody had those thoughts, put it in the creative state, which is what the prefrontal cortex is. And we created the things that were important to us, the things that really matter. We're using this innate thing that we have over every other animal, which is this ability to really create. Now, animals, primates and stuff can create little tools to help them gather food. We build skyscrapers and spaceships and beautiful, amazing things. We build ships and all this stuff. That's your thoughts. You're using those thoughts in a creative way, and that is awesome. And when you feel a great thought or have a great feeling, that's good. And when you feel something sad, like the potential loss of your mom, that should make you feel sad in that moment. You know, today is 4 years from when my wife died. And I'm sad right now, but I'm not sad today at all. I was so excited to be in this call because you have to realize life is going to happen to all of us. If you're focused on your wealth, you can't take it to the grave with you. If you're focused on your looks, you're going to get older. If you're focused on basically your fame, it's going to pass. If we focus on the intrinsic things, the things we want to create in our life, everything's possible. So although you're dealing with one of life's events, your mom is 90 plus years old. By the way, the life expectancy is 85. So if she's 90 plus, she beat the damn average. You should be grateful for the time you've had with her and not spend a moment of time focusing on that. I'm a critical care physician, and I dealt with families dealing with their loved ones at the last moments of their life, and I would do everything I could to save them. But many times I would see, just because they were letting their emotions keep them, they suddenly wanted to keep their grandmother or grandfather alive at 90 or 85 years old or whatever it was, because they felt guilty inside because they never spent the time with the relationship. Okay. So what I'm talking about, Margie, is when you fully start to understand those thoughts and feelings are not you. The awareness of who you are is what always makes reality a beautiful thing. So in that, yes, you'll have feelings of sadness and you'll have feelings of joy. And you should express and understand life has both those, and not just be, in a good mood when something happy. When something sad happens, feel that experience. You're a human. We're fellow humans. I have the same experience you saw when I talked about my wife. What I'm saying is I don't let those dictate my presence or my future. I remember those with great honor and the time I had, just like your family should do that. And by the way, you're the one that's working on it. Your other family members that aren't, they're going to be in the drama trial, and don't get frustrated because they haven't done the work yet. Until someone raises their hand and are willing to do the work, they're not going to get what you're even talking about. But for you, you're not a robot. You're a conscious human being on a journey to become more. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you so much. And once again, I just appreciate the tools that we are given, and I am loving learning who I am.
Yeah, it's cool, isn't it? It's the
It
best
sure
thing.
is.
Listen, when you heard me say this lots of times, but I like it because I can't think of it better. But when you can let the stuff that happens, you have to be like water on a duck's back, right? It rolls off you and you move on. Not that you're not aware, not that you're denying it. Actually, what we do with our voice in our head, we specifically push things down that are painful. We repress them and they're in there. And then that's part of your stuff. And then something else happens in the future. It touches that stuff. Now you're starting to become, and what we talked about today is the first step, just being aware of it. And then we're going to talk about being able to let it bubble up, appreciate it, be grateful for what it's taught you, and have no resistance. Let it go. Surrender to it. It's just part of the human experience. Cool?
Very cool. Thank you so much, Dr. A.
You're welcome. Awesome. Who's next?
All right, we have Lindsay.
Hey, Lindsay.
Good morning, Dr. A. How are you?
I am fantastic.
Fantastic. I'm coming to you today in just total gratitude, and it's amazing God's timing of this today because last weekend or last week at Grow Global, I got an opportunity to touch my stuff. And what I recognized is that the things that I had been buried from my 10-year-old self that I am now, like you said, working on allowing to bubble up, not overcome me, but actually help me to address it, let it go. I recognize now that my level of commitment to touching my stuff directly impacts the people that are in my life and on our team, allowing them permission to do the same. And so for the last 4 years over our coaching journey, since I'm burying and stuffing my stuff, they're doing the same. And my relationships with my clients and my coaches is very surface level because them digging deep forces me to dig deep and touch that stuff. And so it's just amazing how you pour into us in such a timely manner that even after 4 years of feeling like this, that I'm growing, that I recognize that I still have so much more to do. And it's only going to help more people grow and open up their true potential and possibilities. So thank you so much.
You have a beautiful heart. And the cool thing about it, it's a lifelong journey. So if we think about it, just to kind of make an analogy, obviously the Habits of Health is where I started, in helping people create health and well-being. But, if as you get older, if you don't work out, and I don't necessarily mean lift weights, but do resistance training or go for walks or walk up and down stairs, if you don't do that, your muscles get flabby. As you get older, if you're not, and then working out, you can't just do it for a month and then you're fine. I mean, you can find a happy medium. I'd rather have someone be at a healthy weight and basically be active for the rest of their life, because that's something you can do into your 80s and 90s and 100s. Same thing with your mind. And that's why I show little baby steps. That's why it's micro habits. It's about in your feelings and things. There, you're going to get your stuff touched. But instead of beating yourself up, recognize it's not you. In you in your purest form, you're just learning how to now we're changing the programming in your brain. Your brain was programmed for negative bias. 10,000 years ago, you could get hurt a lot of different ways. And so just like most animals, we taught the 4 F's, like we talked about earlier, and you would do that instantaneously. Today, most of those threats are perceived threats. They're not real. They're perceived threats to our ego, to someone, judging us or judging ourselves. And those things are garbage. They're the stuff up there. And when it gets touched, it's going to spin you out of control. And it's not about fixing ourselves. I want to be so clear on it. It's simply about becoming aware and surrendering to the stuff that we used to let bother us, and now move forward in small baby steps. And you'll see over time. And I already see you're seeing it because you had kind of those aha moments a couple of weeks ago. And now you recognize you don't just like Margie, she can't go into her family and start dissecting the drama triangle, because first of all, until this is the key part for everybody listening, that's why I showed the thing, am I ready to move, right? It's like move it, like Madagascar, the lemur, you got to move it. Until you're ready to move it, you're going to stay with your old story, with your old program. The life book is so critical to our clients' success because it identifies their current story about their health and their well-being. It shows them through the evaluation and assessment. It shows them where they are in those key areas. And then they have the opportunity over a year at their pace to now change that story, to build a story, to become the dominant force in their life. That is available to every single human on this planet. It's a matter of us now taking the time in the space to first start with awareness, self-awareness, and then move on to self-management and then optimization. And so when I draw the little figure about internal stability and external equilibrium, to your point, once you're working on that internal stability, where you're no letting this stuff turn you sideways, all of a sudden, clearly you have this area, which I was talking to Margie about, which is the prefrontal cortex, which allows you to build strong relationships, to listen to people. Because as soon as you're listening to somebody and they touch your stuff, man, you're not listening to them anymore. You're now listening to your inner voice, which is now a disconnect. And you wonder why some people like, God, I don't know why I'm telling them what to do, but they're not. Don't tell anybody what to do. Allow them to disclose what's on their mind so you can help them start to understand how they can now raise their hand and start to grow up.
And
Make
let me
sense?
share, that is such a huge relief of burden of being the
Yeah.
hero,
Yeah,
right?
it's
Because
such a
now
relief.
I get to set them up to be their own hero and empower them versus always having that feeling that responsibility. So
Yes.
good.
It's beautiful. And I, just so you know, that journey never ends because it is changing. The world is never going to change as slowly as it is today. It's continuing to accelerate. And with machine-based technology taking over, I mean, I know now when I go online, there's 6 things on the side of something I thought of in the past. Somebody's like Big Brother watching every move I make. If I don't stop, challenge, and choose and say, wait, I'm in control. If I want to buy your thing, great. I'm closing those things up and I'm focusing on what I'm doing. And the more you understand that for us to go on that journey, that's how we'll create optimal health and well-being for ourselves and be available to help others. So thank you so much. That was great. Cool. Rach, who's
All
next?
right. We have Shauna next. Shauna, can you come on camera and unmute yourself?
Hello, Dr. Anderson. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I wasn't expecting to be on with you today, and I want to thank Chris Pettit for putting in the chat asking if I had any questions, because if I had an hour with you, Dr. Anderson, it's a bucket list thing, just so you know. A quick backstory is this last weekend, we had like a healthy hangout, a healthy retreat with a bunch of girlfriends, from sound baths to yoga. And we tried to find a middle ground to where to meet. And we ended up meeting where I grew up, probably less than a mile away from the house I grew up in. And last month we talked about, our parents doing our best. And it was crazy through all of these like spiritual connections I was having with myself, or my higher consciousness during this weekend. I could feel my alignment just come back and be one. And so it was profound to me that prior to that weekend and coming off of Grow Global, there was like this 2% shift, or maybe a 5% or something happening. And so it was interesting that it took really going in that deep with myself to find that where that I was off and really coming back into who I am and being okay with that. So my question is, what can you share with us when people feel that alignment off, whether it comes in as anxiety or it comes in as depression or it comes in as lethargy? Like, what can you advise us to do to just bring it all back down our chakras?
Yeah, that's really good. And I'm very, as a physician, I know a lot about physiologic coherence, right? The body is the most magnificent thing ever created. I remember in medical school, just fascinated, it was so cool. And that physiology does so many amazing things. We have heart rate variability. It allows us to breathe. It allows our alimentary canal to digest our food. It allows us to visual and adapt to different light and different distances better than super cameras. I mean, it's so incredible. But that physiology is sitting there as part of your emotional coherence and your cognitive coherence. And if you think about it, your emotions are like all these little notes that are going on. Well, the physiology is part of that, and then the note, there's all these notes. And then what we do cognitively is we bring that back into alignment. So when that happens, it's like having an orchestra, right? All of a sudden you have, your all the data points of your physiology shift into these tunes. But if the tunes aren't coordinated by something, then they basically, the sound is off, right? And we've heard that. You've heard it where an instrument's off or not tuned right. And even though you have an orchestra, if one instrument's off, it takes everything off. So it's important for us to realize that we're operating way deep inside our physiology, in our emotions, and like you were talking about our energy centers, like, in our heart coherence. And, when people someone on the call today maybe think, oh, they're talking about foo-foo. No, heart coherence, they're some of the top institutes of cardiovascular research are looking at our heart coherence. It's 5,000, well, first of all, it's 50 times electrically more powerful than our brain electrical input. It's 5,000 times more powerful than electromagnetic than here. So all these things get out of line. So what we're fed right into it, is awareness. It's awareness at whatever level that is. So, again, going back to the car where it's a boyfriend's car that you went out with in high school and then, you'd forgotten about, and you're walking with your significant other spouse and you just had a wonderful dinner and you're walking down the street and all of a sudden the car goes by. Inside, in your experiences, in your subconscious level, something connected that and took you back to your stuff. So, and all of a sudden, your husband's walking alongside you and you just checked out. You're totally checked out. If you don't know, you just say, oh, I don't know. I'm okay. Or everything's fine, right? That's what we say. And inside, we've now stimulated this cognitive emotive loop, and we've taken ourselves fully out of coherence. We've taken a beautiful, pleasurable evening together, and we've let something outside of it. So it always starts, Sean, it always starts with awareness. And here's the key part. If you look at, I'm using an extreme example to show how important it is. We know we have intuition, right? And we have instinct. This is about intuition. Your cognitive areas have intuition and they inform your body, whether it's introspection, which is basically how your body sends signals up to your brain, or it's just that introspection that you have where something's off. And the key thing is they looked at people on murderer's roll. I mean, these guys or girls that did horrific things, killed somebody, raped somebody, something horrific. And when they really evaluated, there was a moment of clarity just before they had this horrific act where they could have changed. And in that sense, they all said that. It wasn't like, it's a murder of passion, yes, that's what overwhelmed, which created these horrific events for the behavior to actually do that. But before that, there was a moment where if there'd been there was awareness, but not how to manage it. So the whole thing at every level is when you start to feel something off, and it can be, and that's the time to get it. Right when it goes off, before it triggers all the stuff we talked about in the drama triangle and waking the limbic system and activating the endocrine system and the hormonal release of cortisol and epinephrine and norepinephrine, before all that happens and takes you down the rabbit hole, which then becomes significant and it takes a while to get out, there is a moment and it's becoming aware. It's like the conductor pointing over to that violinist and saying, check your instrument. It's off just a little bit. So this area in your brain, before you lose it, and it's taken over by the middle area in your brain, the limbic area, check yourself, quiet yourself, don't do anything reactive. And that's why stop, challenge, and choose is always a great starting point, because you can instantaneously, as soon as you start feeling, stop thinking about it, stop processing it, start engaging your feelings, take a calm moment, regather yourself, regroup, and say, challenge, why am I feeling this way? Now, in the case today, I'm just using my own example. And by the way, I'm just a little farther ahead on the journey and I've been studying. I'm a human being just like you are, just like all your girlfriends were. And by the way, I'd be curious to hear how it felt. Had you been near your old house? Do you go there often?
No.
Okay. So that's a great, and I want to make sure we do this so I don't forget this. So when you looked at your old house and saw it, what came up inside of you?
So it's interesting because away from there, it's not always the best memories, but being there, it was like this rush of happiness and remembering picking honeysuckles. And I got to talk to the new owner of the home and I got to see the tree I planted when I was 7. And it was just like pure joy. It was amazing. And I just want to go back there all the time now.
Yeah. So, okay. So you're on your journey. And so I always like to leave breadcrumbs, or, we talk about the gain and the gap. The gain you've had is you can go back there and now just have these overwhelming emotions, some of them negative, some of them positive, but you're just like that tree. When you planted as a little tree, that tree's now grown into this magnificent, live thing in nature that you watch grow. And that same thing has happened to you because you've raised your hand and said, I'm open, curious, and I want to grow and I want to become more. And hopefully are you going to cry?
I'm crying. It's good.
No, that's it. I'm crying for you. I just really talking to you because that is the connection of humans together. See, it's not and this happens with guys all the time. I remember in high school playing football, the guys in the locker, you never cried, right? You were considered a weakling if you did. And all that is a bunch of made up social stuff. When we fully start to explore ourselves, each and every one of us has an incredible beauty, and we're more alike than different. When we stop letting our stuff take over and we start letting it go. So that's the key way to get back into that. And hopefully that makes sense, is that coherence that occurs when you basically sense something, there's a note off, or there's a line in the song off. And I'm glad you're crying, because that is the beauty of what it is to be a human being. It's the beauty of feeling and fully feeling your emotions, and then recognize that emotion, then letting it go. So the difference between, if you're okay, I do a lot of offshore sailing and stuff. And if you, especially not familiar with it, I know the difference between a nurse shark and a tiger shark. And I watch people in that environments in some of the areas I sail, because they get fed scraps and stuff. The nurse sharks come along. And the nurse shark, they can hurt you if you put your hand underneath, but you can pet them and they're not going to do anything, because you know what they are and you look at them. Someone that's scared to death because they saw Jaws 30 years ago and have imprinted in their brain a permanent loop of stuff, when they see it, they're not listening to me tell them it's a nurse shark. They're not getting in the water because they're relying on their old story, their old programming, and they're not willing to be open, curious, and want to grow.
Yep. I love this. Thank you so much, Dr. Anderson.
Welcome. You're so welcome. Good. Awesome. We got room. We got about 12 minutes left. Got room for maybe one or two more.
All right, we have Brooke next. Brooke, can you come on camera? There you are.
Hey, Brooke.
Hello. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Dr. A. These conscious leadership forums have been so amazing. I tell everybody who will listen to me about them because they're just so powerful. I was blessed to be able to be at Grow Global, a week ago I had several coaches there as well. And the thing that you said even today on this, and you said there, was wake up. And that has hit me stronger since Grow Global than ever. And my question is, I'm so passionate and so excited about the mission, and I really want to help people wake up. And that's really my question, is Grow Global, I saw my coaches wake up, and their passion, their excitement, their energy is nothing like I've ever seen for them before. And it's just so awesome to see that. And I want that for so many other people, to have that wake up experience. And I know so many people that oh my gosh, if only they would wake up, wow, their life could totally be changed. But how do you have any tips, or what can you share for us to be able to help wake people up?
Yeah, that's a great question. So here's the first part. So people go, I talk a lot about transactional and transformational leadership. And obviously in our model, there's the opportunity for both, and both are important. But see, what you just saw, Brooke, is that the reason, it's like when I talk about aim to stay, about intrinsic motivation, and then the strategies, the tactics, the actions, and working together. See, until someone's intrinsically motivated, and when there's so much about inside of them, and whether they're judging themselves, whether they're deflating themselves or exaggerating themselves, either way, they're not fully awake. And they're operating from a principle and a pattern where stuff has to be a certain way, or it's not acceptable. So in this journey of 20 years, all of it's important. I want to make sure all of it's important. So the four components, obviously the habit self transformational system, the 6 macro habits. But the part that really accelerates the process, and when Shauna was talking about, she felt 5-6%. Once you start to realize where you are now, when you see what's happening to them, it's not a 3% change. It's like 1,000% change. Because once we have our mind and our thoughts working towards us, like I said, we can create spaceships. We can create amazing stuff. We can create a great, healthy life. We can create great well-being. We can be great parents. All that stuff comes from not allowing the stuff to take over and the voice in the head to keep you in this very restricted state where things have to be a certain way. So it starts with just basically listening to people. See, for most people, people have conversations, but they're waiting for the other person to stop talking. And sometimes they're not even waiting, they're interrupting them, or they're starting to talk, or the conversation started and they're immediately saying, oh yeah, I know what they're saying. I'm going to fix them. I'm going to help them. So the waking up part is to recognize and realize the more we can be fully present. What I mean is, if we can understand that almost all the time we take our thoughts and feelings and our ego and their filters were where we take the world and we process it through those perceptions, through those filters. And as soon as we do that, we really start to lower our ability to connect, build rapport, and have the person create trust. You know, the speed of trust is critical in any relationship. And so when people, you know, start to understand and start self-leading themselves, working on it yourself of waking up, and now helping your clients, your coaches, and your business coach and your business leaders all start to wake up, then everything changes. So you have to have the balance of both. But what's great about it, the best way is by representing yourself. As you work on yourself, people will see that you're interacting with them differently. You're listening to them more. They're resonating with you. We have mirror neurons in our brain that sense when someone, that's why when I talk about the speed of trust, the two sides that Covey talks about, the one side is character, and part of character is obviously integrity. You have to be intellectually, you have to be honest. The second part is intention. If our intention is to help others, if we care about them, we're not trying to get them to become clients or coaches, but we're actually trying to help guide them to the things that are most important to them, that signals out. And the more they understand that, is the more that they see that you're actually listening and understand them, and they're responding to what they want, not having an agenda, but basically actually fully expressing, how can we're not for everybody. We're for those that raise their hand and want to get healthier. And then they're going to see you project that, and that opens up the curiosity. And then, as you know, in the beginning of in the app and Habits of Health, it's about stop, challenge, and choose. It's giving them first this understanding. Most people, 95% of people, don't know they have a choice. They think that their thoughts and feelings are them, and they're stuck in that story for their whole life. And so they never get out of it, and they can be turned sideways, just like we were talking about the car going down the street. They're stuck in the paradigm where the negative bias takes over, the ego tries to support and creates a world, and that world creates continual misery and trouble for people. So that's where it starts. Your actions will change everything in your life. Cool?
Yeah. So really, what I'm hearing is more conversations, just being more, listening without the agenda, which, just having more of those conversations.
Yeah,
with
nobody
people.
listens to anybody.
Right.
Brooke, people are so ready to talk and tell what they want to say. That's their ego driving them, by the way. That's the self-interest self. I am the center of the universe, and everything I say is more important, better, or I'm miserable, and no, you don't know me. You don't know who I am. I'm different. I have a different, and all is it a bunch of caca. It's all garbage and stuff in our head. And it's basically unpacking that stuff, unpacking and recognize and that's what I'm saying is moving back. That's why I show the thoughts and feelings in here, or emotions in here, getting that you understand the first spot is becoming the witness, the conscious witness, the observer of the stuff that's going, including your thoughts and feelings, and then going down the path and start having kindness and understanding. There'll always be good and bad and everything, and understand, you know what, I'm taking control. So when Margie was talking about, I just feel like that's what you would think. Your thoughts and feelings are keeping you in a box, keeping you rigid. The world has to be a certain way. It's creating robotic behavior. Your ego's saying, no, things have to be this way. And when they are that way, it's like, you heard Dan talk about, broken clocks, right? Two times a day. But the other 98% of the time, it's miserable and it's incorrect. That's where the voice in our head is. That's where our stories are. And to start to become aware is where that starts. Just being aware and be curious. And I can tell you now, because I've done quite a bit of work for myself, I just laugh at myself when I start to go down one of those paths. I just crack up and say, no, I'm not doing that. I don't do that anymore. I'm going to enjoy my day. It's a gorgeous day. I'm driving in the state of Washington and it's beautiful. And yes, I'm dealing with a relative that's sick in the family. And I understand that, and I will address that. It's not ignoring it or repressing it or denying it, addressing it, but addressing it in a way that the rest of the time I am fully aware and charging up the energy coming into me about how incredible appreciative and the gratitude I have for life. And that I'm even alive, right? To be alive in the case, so anyway, hopefully that's helpful.
Very helpful. Thank you so much, Dr. A. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. We have 4 minutes. Rachel, we have one more short question, I hope.
Sure. Yes, Janine, we'll have you go next.
Hi, Janine.
Hi, Dr. A. Thanks for taking my
You're
question.
welcome.
I have adult sons. They're 19 and 23. So I live alone. I'm divorced. One of my sons lives on his own. The other one is in college. And, I drip a little bit of this technology on them, stop, challenge, choose. We talk a little bit about, what you've exampled, the breathing, drinking water maybe before you respond. But what is another good way to talk about this thought technology, this transformational technology with like a 19 and a 23-year-old? I know you have girls similar ages, without sounding preachy, because sometimes if I get a little preachy, the hand goes up at that age, they already know everything, so how do you bring this to your kids?
Yeah. So that's great. Well, I have an advantage because I've been doing it for a long time with them, right? And they actually, they basically, really know how much I care about. So I'm going to go back to motivation, right? Teenagers are in the early 20s are motivated. The world is all around about themselves. So it's got to be around that. And so the 3 things you can do as a mom is basically intrinsic motivation. Find reasons and things they're doing why they might like to learn it. Second is have fun with them, do it in a fun way. And the third is love them. And as a mom, that comes naturally. That's expression. Stay in there and don't do it from an up one, down one. And this is the hardest thing, because when they were little and you had to change their diapers, you had full control, right? And there's been this evolution. The teenage brain, as it goes into early adulthood, is evolving. It's self-actualizing. It's moving behind the social and parental guidelines and then moving on to discover themselves.
Right.
So don't take it personally. When they're not listening to you, it's because they've listened to you most of their life, and that's been the environment. They're now trying to find their way. And that's why, in late teens, early 20s, your parents you've never been so stupid. And then they'll come back to you, right?
Yes.
So just and I think a really good one to use, which is simple, is what I was talking about earlier, the upset technology. What happened, what was missing, what's next? Because they'll see, because if take a couple situations where they're upset, ask those questions and you'll watch them calm down. Because now what we're doing is we're going back up to this area, and that is nothing more than an actual example that you can ask those questions without getting into preaching them. And when they start to calm down and everything, you can then reflect, not then, because you say it right then, oh, I see, I told you so, then they're going to whistle back.
Right.
But wait, and then, at dinner that night, or when it's still in recent memory, then kind of say, was that helpful for you? And they'll say, yeah, and say, yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Just, there's some things that, I'm learning that I only want to share them with you because I love you more than anything. And I know you're finding your way, and I know you don't want me to tell you what to do, and I don't want to tell you what to do. And so you're treating him more as a fully grown human. And that's a hard role for parents. The helicopter parent taking over and doing that, it's kind of tough for them. So does that make sense?
Oh my gosh, so awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we are at right on 1 o'clock. We like to keep this right an hour. I know you have busy schedules. Please put in the chat other things you'd like to see, things we can do, things we can add. Make sure you're sharing this. Rachel, can we put in the chat the recording where basically we can give this out? I would give this recording out to people because I think people are really struggling with this. And what's nice about this is basically not just free, but it's designed not as a commercial application, but just one human talking to another human and you guys interacting and giving people a forum where we can explore these ideas of increasing our consciousness and helping us become the dominant force in our life. So God bless and thank you guys so much.